Guard lay on the mic tonight. News coming in left and right. More better with the latest fight. Gene's got the inside sight. Champions rise and they fall. Wire to wire, got it all. Every move in every brawl. Tune in for the curtain call. Wrestling talk all night long. Catch the latest match and song. Ring the bell, let's get it on. Every story bright and strong. In the ring they clash and roar. New rivalries and so much more. Titles change and legends lore.
What's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it is Scardy3, and welcome back to the Meaty Boyz podcast, where, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I am reunited with the greatest co-host of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
I'm doing great on a Tuesday night. Great night for sports. Great night for wrestling.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm super excited. We're going to have a great show this week. Plus, in a little bit, we got a big announcement. We got a special guest coming on next week. So, looking forward to that. But we got a lot of stuff to get into tonight, Mo. And why don't we start off with, I wanted to talk a little AEW to start this whole thing off, Mo.
Let's do it.
Because something very divisive happened there. And I've been very high on AEW. I think they've had a phenomenal year. But I'm unsure about this one. So there's a new Ring of Honor World Champion. And ironically, they put it on the guy who is getting please retire chance for, a good part of the year now. In Chris Jericho. 2024 Chris Jericho. We're still giving him titles on TV. And I'm curious, Mo, because a lot of people there, and I'm a big Chris Jericho fan. I want to see him on my TV as long as possible. Love watching him. But there's a lot of people who hated it. They don't want to see Jericho holding titles anymore, while they want the younger generation in there. I was just kind of curious and wanted to get your take. What do you think of Chris Jericho still being given titles in 2024?
It's kind of surprising to me. I've watched him in his time in AEW. I don't think he's anywhere near the in-ring performer he once was. I feel like they have enough talent on their roster to have younger guys carrying belts. If you want Chris Jericho on your roster, you can obviously put him in a feud with somebody else. I look at Chris Jericho and what he is right now, and I've been a fan of his for years. But I look at him and I wonder if he's not in danger of becoming what Ric Flair looked like at the end of his career, where he should have retired, but he kept going and he kept going and he kept going. And you can tell that more times than not now, guys have to carry him. I just don't think it's viable that he should be wearing a belt. I think he's closer to a point in his career where if you want to still be part of the business, maybe be more of a manager, maybe he's got the personality and the mic skills, be a commentator. But I just think it's tough for him to be an in-ring performer with some of the talent they have on the roster and him still holding a belt. I'm talking about, like you said, the 2024 version of Chris Jericho. He shouldn't be holding a belt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've always loved Jericho, but you're always worrying about your, heroes just, being remembered by the newest generation is just the watch. You don't want your heroes to the new generation being remembered like, hey, look at Celtic Shaq over there. Like,
right.
You want to avoid that watch label. Like, and I think the best thing for Jericho is I know he still loves the business and I want to see him on my TV, as long as possible, but that's also a big Jericho fan. But I do think putting the belt on him was not the move to be made right now. And I think he just needs I think the AEW audience just needs a break from Jericho. I think he needs to go out for a bit, reinvent himself, The learning tree, I know it's getting a lot of reaction, is new gimmick right now, but it doesn't seem like that positive. People are booing him. He's getting that almost like go away heat. Like, I'm tired of seeing you on my TV. Please go away. And that's
Yeah.
so like he's still getting a reaction, but I'm not sure if it's the reaction you really want to see out of one of the biggest stars in your company or one of the biggest draws. And it's unfortunate. So I hope they get that figured out and we can get Chris Jericho back in everybody's good graces.
Yeah, look, you made a great point that you hate for your heroes or guys that you were fans of to stay too long. Because like you said, what happens is, like in any other sport or form of entertainment, the younger guys come in and they start watching, and in their minds, they're like, "What is all this talk about this Jericho guy? He's old and slow." And I mean, I'm just saying, they didn't see him when we saw him. They didn't see him when he left WCW and popped up in WWE. Like he's been one of the elite wrestlers over the last 20 years, but it look, Father Time catches up to them all. I still think he has value, like I said, because of his ability to get on the mic. He could do a lot of different things that don't actually have to be in the ring. It's just a matter of would he be open to doing that?
No, absolutely. And speaking of Chris Jericho, he made a list, and this is what I want to remember him as. Sports Illustrated came out with a list. They ranked the 20 greatest WWE wrestlers of all time.
Mm.
And this caused a lot of controversy. And it's probably it's always a good thing. Controversy creates cash, in the words of Eric Bischoff. Well, I want to read this list off to you and just everybody in general.
Sure.
And simple. Let's see how they did. So we'll start at 20 and count down to 1, because I think that's the fun way to do this thing.
Bet.
At number 20, Becky Lynch. At number 19, we have Mick Foley. Number 18, Chris Jericho. Number 17, CM Punk. 16, Andre the Giant. 15, Randy Orton. 14, Edge. 13, Roddy Piper. Number 12, Kurt Angle. Number 11, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Number 10, Bruno Sammartino. Number 9, Bret Hart. Number 8, Shawn Michaels. Number 7, Triple H. Number 6, The Undertaker. Number 5, Roman Reigns. Number 4, John Cena. Number 3, The Rock. Number 2, Hulk Hogan. And number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, by wrestlers, obviously, a lot of people were confused. They're talking the total package: in-ring work, mic work, charisma, drawing money. So I saw a lot of people riled up at some of these names, but it's the whole package. So, Mo, what do you think about the list?
It's an interesting list. I think at the top of the list they got a lot of that right, but if you're saying the total package, then that's not really the same as the out and out greatest wrestlers in the WWE. Throw out who's the biggest draws, but just I'm talking about the guys that were the biggest fan favorites. Like, for instance, they had Bruno Sammartino in their countdown, but to me, if you've got Bruno Sammartino in your countdown, you have to have Bob Backlund in your countdown. You have to. Backlund held the belt just a little bit less than Sammartino for 5 years. And if you look at the roster of guys that Bob Backlund went against, it's a who's who of professional wrestling, and he held onto that belt for 5 years. So I like the top of the list more than the back of the list, but I think that if, like I said, if Sammartino's going to be there, Bob Backlund's going to be there. But if they have some kind of different criteria about biggest draw and all that kind of stuff, that's completely different, because which is weird because in the San Martino and Bob Backlund era, they didn't have the advantage of being on TV all the time like that, or social media and those things. So I don't know why Bruno would be elevated more than Bob Backlund would be.
No, that's fair, But I think the funny part is how upset everybody got. And the name that threw me off that everybody got riled up over, because once again, I think a lot of people saw this and thought immediately it's just all about the in-ring work. Too many people are upset by Hulk Hogan. Listen, Hulk Hogan at number 2 is the only right answer because, and you can argue, and there's a legitimate case for Hulk Hogan at number 1 for a list like this. Not only was he part of the biggest boom in wrestling history, he was part of the second biggest boom too. He was the one that helped bring WWE mainstream, and then he also helped create the Monday Night Wars with the NWO. So I think Hulk Hogan at 2 is, a lot of people for some reason annoyed, but I thought, honestly, that's the perfect spot for him.
I don't have a problem with Hogan at 2 because if you know the history of wrestling, Ric Flair is probably the first wrestling superstar, but Hulk Hogan was the first wrestling megastar. Like, Hulk Hogan was the first worldwide, world-renowned star. We're not talking about in-ring skills. His persona was bigger than life. Kids were dressing up like him. He had toys. He was the first one that had that kind of merch. Hulk Hogan was the monster star when they did the first WrestleMania. Like, he's that guy. And to his credit, even though I've never been his biggest fan, but I have no problem acknowledging how big an impact he had on wrestling. Not to mention, like you said, Brett, he goes to WCW not at the beginning of his career, probably a little bit past the middle of his career, reinvents himself into Hollywood Hogan, and becomes a huge draw in WCW, creating the whole NWO faction and part of those huge wrestling wars. So I couldn't have him number 1, but I think number 2 is the perfect spot for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's some, more recent names too. Becky Lynch cracks the top 20 and got no issue with that. We got Roman Reigns cracking the top 5. It's weird to say, but I have no doubt that a lot of people in a list like this, I think soon they'll put him ahead of John Cena. And I think it's the next challenge, I guess, Mo. My question to you is, because those top 3 names are just straight up tough to crack. You gotta be well versed in a multitude of things. Do you think there's a situation where we're talking about Roman Reigns over any one of those guys in the top 3, Stone Cold, Hogan, Rock, or Cena?
He might be able to. I don't know, because Rock and Cena, you can put them top 2 and 3 in terms of their mic skills, right? Like, Roman doesn't have those kind of mic skills. Now, he's gotten much better. He doesn't need Heyman to talk for him as much, but that's not really his strength. His strength is being like the strong, silent kind of guy. What Cena and Rock can do, Roman can't do. What Austin can do, Roman can't do. So I think he can still go up. I don't know. Here's the thing about that. Isn't Hogan kind of like the immovable object? Like, I think both you and I would agree. I'm not putting him 1 over Austin because I like Austin 1. But I don't know if you can move Hogan, Brett, because you pointed out he's so much a part of the elevation of wrestling. Wrestling was a regional sport or entertainment, whatever you want to call it. Even in the heyday of guys like Ric Flair when they were younger, and Bruno Sammartino, superstar Billy Graham, Dusty, we could go on, and Bob Backlund, like, it had a following, but it was more regional. When Hulk Hogan blew up and became the WWE champion, he took wrestling to a whole nother stratosphere. It wasn't regional no more. It became national, and eventually it became worldwide. I don't think he can ever be. I don't think he can go up, but I don't think you can ever move him from that number 2 spot.
No, absolutely. It almost feels like those two are locked, like Stone Cold Hulk Hogan. Like those two are locked at 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think they'll ever, like, I don't think it really matters what anybody else does at this point. I don't think you could ever knock any of them any lower than 3. And to even think about knocking someone like Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin down in terms of just the greatest wrestlers of all time when you start adding an Impact, I'm not even sure what anybody could possibly even do to knock those two down, because their impact was just so insane that even if someone like The Rock couldn't knock him down a spot when he's a movie star and
right.
he started the Attitude Era, like I'm not sure what anybody could do to rip those two out of those spots.
And the Attitude Era brought us so many mega stars, but nobody owned that era or personified that era more than Austin. Like, I used to love watching the interactions between Rock and Triple H and Austin. Like, there were so many guys that could go back and forth. There were so many great talents, great on the mic. The personalities were bigger than life. I think Hogan and Stone Cold are solidified at 1 and 2, and and it's not going to be easy to move Rock or Cena out, but I think there are enough talented guys that are in probably like at their peak right now who may, when it's all said and done, maybe Roman does, because I think Roman is one of those guys. Let's say he can stay healthy. You're looking at a guy who's still got another 10 years at least, Brett. You know what I mean? In this business, we're going to see Roman Reigns as a face some more. We're going to see Roman Reigns as a heel some more. He's going to wear multiple championships before this is all said and done. So yeah, I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's very unique, because don't forget another great thing that Rock and Cena both did, and you can appreciate this. As big as they were, the list of guys that both of those guys put over is like an all-star of professional wrestling. Not a lot of guys are willing to put other guys over at the risk of their own standing or benefit, but both of those guys did that.
No, that's absolutely fair. Yeah, I so it's funny because I always credit when people put together a list or even are bold enough to put together a list like this, because no matter what you do, it's going to be hated. There's always going to be a group of people. So, credit to the guys at Sports Illustrated for putting this together, because you knew once you put that out there, it was not going to go over well. But you can never make everybody happy.
No, but you make it. Wait, what did you just say? You let off the show with a list like this. You're going to get some criticism. People are going to come for you because there literally is no perfect list. I have no problem with Austin number 1, but I'm sure in the minds of many other wrestling fans, they probably have somebody else in mind that should be number 1. So there's no perfect list. I think Steve Austin, his persona, his character, and what he represented and how he performed, he was the perfect anti-hero. He wasn't a face and he wasn't a heel. He was somewhere in the middle, and it worked.
Yeah, and it's funny because I saw the people, saw some guys on Twitter, they were jumping on like, oh, there are just a lot of better wrestlers than this. Like, this isn't just taking into consideration in-ring work. Like, I think a lot of people misunderstand that, like, someone like Stone Cold, I can find better wrestlers than Stone Cold, but
right.
You're not going to find another Stone Cold. Like, I could go to my local indie event, and I bet you pretty much every single one of them are going to be better wrestlers than Andre the Giant, but none of them have the charisma and everything else that Andre the Giant had. So
agreed. And don't forget, if this was about like who's a great scientific wrestler and all that kind of stuff, then you'd be elevating guys like Ricky Steamboat and Mil Mascaras and things of that nature. I think this is about, it is a combination of what you do in the ring as a performer, but like you said, it's your draw, it's the connection and bond you have with the fans, whether you're a face or a heel. Those things are so underrated. They matter. That you and I talked about this, I think last show. We were talking about guys like a Karrion Kross. You and I know that we'll never have this conversation about Karrion Kross about being one of the great all-time wrestlers. He doesn't, there's nothing there. He doesn't have that it. These people, no matter how you feel about them in terms of their wrestling skills, Hogan had that it. If I were going to rank somebody just on their raw athletic ability and factor that in more than just the it, I would rank Kurt Angle over Hulk Hogan. That's how talented an in-ring performer Kurt Angle was. But think about the draw of a Hulk Hogan, like, and the incredible fandom that he had at his peak. And he found a way to recapture that peak again in the NWO, in a whole nother world as an alter ego, as Hollywood. By the way, I've said this once, I'll say it again. My favorite version of Hulk Hogan ever is Hollywood Hogan.
No, that's absolutely fair. Hey, thank you for tuning in, Kyle. Never found Hogan that entertaining outside of Hollywood Hogan. Awesome.
Exactly.
That was my childhood. No, that's fair. I will always remember Austin versus McMahon when McMahon's lying in the hospital and Austin shoots him at the doctor.
Classic.
They started beating him over the head with the bedpan. That was absolute 10 out of 10 TV. But, this next topic, Mo, I found interesting. I'm going to put the quote in the comments because I think that I don't know what to think about this one because I just found this before the show. And Bobby Lashley came out on Twitter and said he had some ideas for a potential feud with Gunther. And here's what he says. When Gunther was rolling, there was one thing I wanted to do with him, and everybody would have been like, ooh, if we were still the Hurt Business, I was like, I want to roll up on him, and I want Gunther to say, people like you don't deserve a chance at my title. People would have been like, what did he say? We would have towed that line. If you think about the German and these black dudes, is there a little bit of racial tension there? He didn't have to go there. What do you mean by people like you? He could have been like, older guys in wrestling. The crowd would have been like, did he just say that? Then I was going to say, I think you look familiar, and do one of these holds his thumb to the top of the lip, indicating a mustache. There it is. I don't know if we could have went there, but if we could have, there would have been so many things you could toe the line with here, and it could have been a huge feud. I think this is a perfect example why you do not give every wrestler creative freedom. Because I love Bobby Lashley and I love Gunther, but I think there are a million other ways you can go about making a feud like that huge without racial undertones.
Right.
Like, I've already watched feuds with racial undertones, and it doesn't give you it gives you that short term, did he just say that? But then the feud in general gets remembered in a negative light.
Right.
Because I remember Triple H telling Booker T this exact thing almost. People like you don't deserve to win my title. And are people talking about Triple H and Booker T and what a great match they had at WrestleMania? No, people just talk about how racist the buildup was. And the ending of the match, which also wasn't great. But I want to get your opinion on this quote, but Mo, to me, this right here is exactly why there is a creative team and there is writers, because I think this is going a little too far, and I think there are better ways to make a feud between those two memorable.
So, what we know, Lashley, he has a lot of thoughts. He's got a lot of thoughts and ideas. They're bad ideas. It's a horrible idea. And he kind of knows it's a horrible idea because he constantly kept saying, I don't know if we could have gone there. To be fair to him, the idea that he just came up with today, nah, man, that's crazy. That wouldn't fly. But if I'm being honest, if he had came up with this idea and he tried it in like 92, 93, it would have worked. You could have got away with it, but that was a different time. It still would have gave you, like you said, just that short burn, but it also would have been remembered for the racial undertones that's not necessary. And if you do something like that, once the feud is over, don't those racial overtones stick to the other guy who started saying those kind of things, and then people perceive that's who they really are? So I just think, like you said, look, just on their talents and their personality differences, you could build up a feud between Gunther and Bobby Lashley just on that alone. Although, if you ask in my opinion, I think that even though he's still an effective and impactful wrestler, I think Bobby Lashley is on the other side of his prime, and Gunther's just coming into his prime. I actually don't think it's that good a matchup. I think that if they got in the ring 10 times, Gunther would win 9 times.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, like I think at a different time it works out fine, but I think to give people an idea on how horribly this would go over in the year 2024, there was a segment on Raw that just upset people. And it was Io Sky, where it was I think it was Kyrie Sane and Io Sky were talking to Adam Pearce, or no, it was to Nick Aldis, and they leave the room, and Carlito comes in, and he looks at them and goes, "I gotta learn Chinese." Obviously, they're Japanese, and even them playing off the idea, because I'm really just sure they're just going with the idea that Carlito is just an idiot. But even just that little comment sparked off like this massive like Twitter criticism. So I couldn't even imagine the backlash that something like this would create. But I agree, if this was like 1992 or even in the Attitude Era, like this would fly, this would pass. But 2024, I think he's just got to read the room on that one. And I hope he doesn't try anything like that in AEW if that is indeed where he's going next.
Do you think Lashley ends up in AEW?
I think so. I mean, because they were talking about bringing back the Hurt Business, and they brought back MVP, and now Shelton Benjamin's there.
Right.
It feels like they're just doing a slow build to eventually bringing in Bobby Lashley. So I think he's coming.
FYI, Shelton Benjamin, who's not a young guy anymore, is still insanely athletic and still in great shape. Like, you can tell a pro's pro, he still puts in the work.
Yeah, you can just tell he loves it. He stayed in shape. He's absolutely great. He's come in, and he had a great match with Lio Rush. And I think next week is going to be an absolute banger. I think it's him and Swerve Strickland tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be great. And maybe, just maybe, this is where they bring in, Bobby Lashley. I can see him showing up on Dynamite one of these weeks and setting up Swerve Strickland versus Bobby Lashley for Full Gear in November. Unless they're saving his debut for Full Gear, which is fine too. But if anything, I know that I'm getting a great match tomorrow between those two.
I think so. I'm definitely going to be there for that.
So, and also there's a very divided on the WWE news that just dropped today. WWE launches new indie wrestling developmental program. Now, what we're doing with this is WWE's IDing some schools, and it sounds like they're really just gonna be like really locked in on certain schools, trying to teach some of these indie guys like the WWE way, and to try to really build up some of these younger wrestlers and mold them to how they want them to be. So, under the program, WWE will provide prominent independent wrestling schools with the WWE official designation, with the goal of providing new trainees and existing talent at these institutions. We got some big names, schools getting backed up. Booker T's Reality of Wrestling, Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory, Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy, Elite Pro Wrestling. These are just some of the names that are getting this designation, but this is WWE just attempting to really expand their talent pool with new and exciting trainees. A lot of people are worried, though, that WWE, dipping their toes into the independent scene will end up hurting the independent scene.
That was going to be my next question to you.
Mo, what do you think? Do you think that this is a good idea, and how do you think it affects the independent scene in general?
I feel like if I'm on the independent circuit, an independent promoter, a promotion, I would have concerns because I'm looking at WWE. They already have Next. They already have all the programs and schools you just named off with those Hall of Fame wrestlers. And now you're trying to extend out into the independent world. I feel like, to me, this is WWE doing what they always do, is it's all or nothing. I think they'll if they get a foot into the independent circuit, I think eventually they're going to monopolize the independent circuit and squeeze out a lot of promotions. That's what I believe.
Would that have been more of an issue under Vince? I don't think it would have been an issue under Vince because I don't think Vince would have actually done anything like this. Vince was just very locked in on his own promotion. Like, there were some like WWE ECW crossovers back in like 1995. But other than that, I'll give Triple H credit. I don't think Vince would have pulled anything off like this. And I think overall for WWE, this is actually I think for WWE it's a good idea. But in this other sense, I do think you're right. Because we've seen WWE do this before, start taking over territories and running promoters out of business. And, I'm hoping that this is more them just wanting new young talent, and I'm hoping that this doesn't hurt the indie scene at all, and maybe it makes it stronger in the long run. But my concern is kind of with you, because history does have a tendency to repeat itself, and we've seen WWE do similar things in the past, so let's just hope that they're working with everybody and not against everybody.
Yeah, look, if they're partnering with some of these independent promotions and schools, that's different, because, like you said, it can strengthen them. And maybe that's the spin they're going for. But if they really mean it, if they're putting their money where their mouth is, then yes, it can strengthen the independent circuit as well as improve the talent pool. No argument there. But I do have concerns because when you're the WWE doing what they're talking about doing or proposing to do, they don't need to do it. It's not a must. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it feels like a grab, a slow grab, because it's not necessary. And I think the independent wrestling circuit is very important. It's very important for a lot of pure wrestling fans who can't get to see the bigger promotions, but they do enjoy the excitement, the talent of the independents. There's value there, I'm following there. So I just hope that they're not trying to monopolize the independent circuit. I hope they really are trying to strengthen it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair enough. And ironically, I'm actually going to an indie show on the 16th of November. So in a couple weeks from now. I took my whole birthday weekend off. My birthday's on November 17th, so it's actually coming up.
That's awesome.
And I took off the whole weekend, and I was trying to find something to do on that Saturday, and all of a sudden I found some indie shows. So I'm like, cool, I have something to do now. So
I like it.
I'll be enjoying some indie wrestling, some SmackDown actually that Friday too. So it's gonna be a big weekend of wrestling for me. So I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of SmackDown, Raw, we saw the Wyatt Six and Final Testament feud get escalated. The Miz got kidnapped on Raw. Yeah. He opened the door to his tour bus, and Dexter Lumis was waiting for him, and he kidnapped him. Now, they have the really hilarious clip that they dropped of Scarlett telling Karrion Kross, like, hey, the Wyatt Six just kidnapped the Miz. And Karrion just looks back and goes, oh, well, he's dead then. And then she's like, we got to go help him. Like, but he's dead. But we got to go help him. And it was this really funny interaction. And I think when we're talking about Karrion Kross, I think they have to start releasing more stuff like that because he comes across as genuine in those backstage clips. And I think little things like that will help him establish a connection. But I just wanted to point out I thought that was great what they did with Kross, and I'm excited to see where this Wyatt 6 and Final Testament feud goes next.
I am too. And yeah, look, those little short bits that they do with Karrion Kross, he's very good at them. Because even though it's rehearsed, the way they went with that back and forth, that interaction, it didn't feel rehearsed. And it was funny. It was entertaining. I think if you can do more short stints like that with him, maybe that's his lane and that's where he can be more effective and that's where he can kind of like form a bond with the fans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you know what everybody's talking about. Looks like we're trending towards the Bloodline reunion. We already have the match announced, ironically. We're gonna have a crown jewel, the OG Bloodline of Roman, Jay, and Jimmy versus the new Bloodline. And we have some controversy, which I think that what they did was absolutely brilliant. So Sami, if anybody didn't see Raw, Sami Zayn came up to Jay after he agreed to come to SmackDown and talk to Roman and reunited with Jimmy. Sami goes, why are you doing this? They made your life miserable forever. I just don't get it. And Jimmy, Jay straight up told him, you're not family, you wouldn't get it. And then Jimmy and Jay are talking, and Jay tells him, I told him that, he's not family, he wouldn't get it, but he also wouldn't let Jimmy bad talk Sami. And then Jimmy goes, I'm going to go find Sami, I'm going to talk to him. Later in the show, the Usos do find Sami talking to Solo outside. So I think they did great there to plant the seeds of dissension. They're teasing Sami working with Solo. But I think the other great story that's going to slowly build from this entire thing, which is why I love when they do multiple angle stuff like this. Kevin Owens is mad at Cody Rhodes for teaming up with the Bloodline.
Right.
I think inadvertently, too, and in the story, I think this is brilliant, you're also building up Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. We saw that's a great feud. They can fight forever, and every match will be different and entertaining. I'm excited to see your opinions on the Bloodline and their segments from this past week. But also, I just wanted to say, I'm excited to see Kevin Owens' reaction to all this, too. It's going to be great.
I am, too. I think what they're doing with the Bloodline and the buildup is so smart, so clever. And they're giving you these little scenes where Sami Zayn could go either way. He may very well be with Jimmy and Jay, or he might be the guy that you don't see coming, and he ends up, because remember, he was with the Bloodline, right? He was in there, he was part of it. But wouldn't it be an incredible storyline if he betrayed them and joined Solo, right? What was Solo's selling point be to Sami Zayn? Like, remember how they treated you like you were a pet? Or you weren't, you know what I mean? Like I could see the hype of that, and I could see that happening. So look, the storyline just keep building and building. And obviously they've got this big meeting, right? With Roman and Jay, right? Taking place Friday.
Yeah.
On SmackDown. And there's going to be some kind of interruption or confrontation from the other bloodlines. So the story just keeps building. So as a fan, I love what they're doing with this, with the buildup, and it's only going to get more interesting eventually at some point when The Rock returns.
Yeah, for sure. That Rock return from Bad Blood feels like a fever dream because he came back and then he left, and then they just haven't really mentioned it at all, and that's the weird part to me. So.
He came back and went on a cursing rant, right?
Yeah, he left and then cursed everybody out on Instagram Live. It was it was great. But I'm curious if he'll be back again. I guess be back again soon. If we'll see him at Crown Jewel or shortly after, because if not, it's just kind of weird to have him do that random one-off appearance and then just go away until even if go away till when? Is he going to be back in January? I'm sure he'll be at the Netflix episode, that first episode, but even then, that would still make that Bad Blood return just really random.
No, I agree. Like I said, they got to figure out a way to incorporate him back into the flow of things. But the build up to the feud that we're gonna have, I'm here for it because it's gonna be a blast. This feud, I can see them having multiple matches before there's a final climax.
Yeah, I think having the 6-man tag at Crown Jewel is actually perfect. They're going to want to do War Games in they're going to want to do War Games in November, so you might as well get the new Bloodline versus Old Bloodline out of the way at Crown Jewel. It's going to be a great match. I wouldn't doubt it if everybody is going to be upset if when the Old Bloodline wins. I would not doubt if they did. The price that everybody else off, I wouldn't be shocked if Solo pins Roman just so everybody can get upset at that visual. But if I had to predict what happens, I actually think the new Bloodline probably wins at Bad Blood.
They do.
I think it's going to be Sami Zayn helping them out.
Yeah, I think they win. I think you're right. I think either Sami helps them out, or maybe just during the course of the match, they target Jimmy or something like that and wear him down. Because to me, in any match they're in, the X factor is always going to be Jacob Fatu.
Netflix should force us to get a heel turn. I desperately would want to see how that would look like. I think the only problem with that, it's too late. Here's my question to that. What could you do to get them to boo John Cena in 2025 on his retirement tour? What possibly could you do? I think with Cena, I think we'll see him toe that line right and be the edgy John Cena that we've seen the past couple of years that we've known and loved. I just don't think it's possible at this point because I genuinely just cannot think of one thing that they could do to get anybody to boo John Cena. And I don't think the fans would ever want to at this point.
I agree.
We know it'll never happen. It's a fun idea. I think the time to turn him heel was against The Rock in 2012. I think that's when it should have happened. But yeah, we've seen Cena as the bad guy. It was a lot of fun. At least we still have the Doctor of Thugonomics. People have him AAR Truth. That's you know what? That might work. Our 24/7, 365, 47-time, 24/7 champion, very beloved. Yeah, no, it was so funny when they came out with that new theme song for SmackDown. And, the most hilarious comment I'll ever see this year might just be them going, well, rap and wrestling don't go together. And my first response was, John Cena has an entire platinum album as a wrestler. So I don't ever want to hear rap and wrestling don't go together.
I think wrestling and all types of music go together.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I don't think wrestling held to any one thing. You could play hard rock, you could play country music, you definitely can do rap music. I think wrestling pairs with any type of music.
No, absolutely. Because, a lot of people think of, songs like My Way by Limp Bizkit because that was the video package for Austin and The Rock at WrestleMania 17. And they'll think of songs of that nature, but I can think of a feud with every different genre with a great song attached to it. Daniel Bryan, that whole video package she did with WrestleMania Thursday 30, they played Imagine Dragons, Monster. That was an absolute banger, which, by the way, I could talk about my favorite video packages for like days because I love wrestling video packages. Yeah, Snoop Dogg's involvement in rap absolutely works. John Cena versus Bray Wyatt had the Eminem's Legacy playing with it. So, like, overall, yeah. I think that was the most hilarious thing because I think wrestling's at its best when you have a little bit for everybody. I think maybe the problem sometimes with wrestling is everybody tries to be a little too black and gray, and they try to fit into a box. But wrestling's at its best when you have guys like all different genres of music. You have colorful guys like the Macho Man wearing crazy stuff, Seth Rollins wearing crazy stuff to the ring. Which, by the way, Seth Rollins, that was absolutely hilarious what he did on Monday. If anybody didn't see it, he had a blue shirt on, like a blue, nice little suit on, and he rips it off to reveal the same exact shirt underneath that shirt. But yeah, I never understood trying to sit there and say, "Oh, this doesn't belong in wrestling. That doesn't belong in wrestling." Dude, wrestling's at its best when it's like a melting pot and it's just a mixture of everything. When you have something for everybody, that's when it's at its best.
Oh, I agree, 100%. The music, the personalities, the events, even certain matches, music go well with. When you go Hell in a Cell, you're always thinking about something a little harder, a little edgier. It just works. It's funny because even when you do some of the great themes of all time, like Macho Man's theme is classic, but it's very similar to Ric Flair's theme, right? It's kind of that high level, elevated music, versus say Stone Cold's music coming in or The Rock's. Like I just think that the right music with the right star works.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. It just has to be with the right person, and that's kind of what's also the big problem that a lot of people had with people making the music now with Def Rebel. A lot of their entrances sounded the same. Like I remember listening to old like Jim Johnston interviews, and he's like, "Yeah, I would watch the wrestlers and how they walk to the ring, and I would really study them, and then I would make a song based on all that." And I think the problem a lot of times too, a lot of people hated with Def Rebel was a lot of the songs were like the same beat and they just sounded so similar that even watching a match like the Royal Rumble match, you hear the entrance music going on. And, you know, back in the day, you could tell who was who with their entrance music. I remember even like not like a couple of years ago, even last year watching the Royal Rumble, you know, that music would hit and I'd be like, who is that again? Oh, it's Austin Theory. Okay, that's Omos's music. Okay. But, you know, had to go on my little rant about music and wrestling. Overall, by the way, and also I think Crown Jewel's going to be great. We're going to have Cody versus Gunther. I think Cody Rhodes loses that match. I think you give the win to Gunther, Mo. Who do you think wins between Cody and Gunther?
I think you're right. Gunther wins. Cody's got heat on him. He doesn't really need that. And in the bigger picture, he's not going to lose his belt. So to lose at Crown Jewel, that works because both champions walk away with their belts. Gunther just has an added accolade, if you will, by beating Cody Rhodes. And that also will set up a Gunther and Cody Rhodes match somewhere down the line. And I'm sure the buildup will be Gunther will be like, well, we already faced each other and you see what happened, Cody. So why wouldn't it happen again? Something along those lines. So yeah, I think this matchup will set up another matchup later on. I think Triple H is always thinking 5 steps ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course Randy Orton got what he wished for. We got Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens.
And Triple H said he was protecting Randy Orton. So the buildup will be, it's probably going to be a great match, an intense match. But at some point, maybe Kevin Owens does something extra and he injures Randy Orton or something of that nature to set up that feud going a little bit longer than we would have guessed.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kevin Owens just not only beats Randy Orton, but takes him out of action for a while.
Right.
I think he's got the move too. We haven't seen it in a minute, but anytime Kevin Owens busts out that power bomb onto the ring apron, it is the most brutal looking thing. He's taken out many guys with that. We got Seth Rollins versus Bronson Reed. This is interesting because you could really go both ways. I think Seth Rollins wins this one. I don't know how ready they are to put the rocket ship onto Bronson Reed by giving him a win over someone like Seth Rollins. So I think Seth wins this one, but I think this will be a really fun match.
Yeah, look, is Bronson Reed is just a powerhouse versus a guy like Seth Rollins who can do a little bit of any and everything in the ring. I'm sure in this match there's going to be a ton of false finishes. Somebody's probably going to get put through a table or something. It's going to be a brutal match. I'm not saying it's impossible that Bronson Reed would win, but I'm gonna lean towards Seth Rollins finding a way to get the win.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, triple threat. I think this one's maybe the most interesting one of the night to me. Actually, I'll save that for last. We got Liv Morgan versus Nia Jax. I got the winner being Tiffany Stratton via cash-in on Nia Jax. If I had to pick a winner between these two, I'd probably go with Tiffany Stratton. Not Tiffany Stratton. I'd probably go with Liv Morgan. But either way, I think Nia's losing this one. And I really am convinced it's going to be Tiffany cashing in on her.
I'm 100% certain. She's been trying to kick her back in slowly. Her timing has just been off. I think Tiffany Stratton cashes in and wins. And I think once she gets the belt, because Tiffany has that kind of heat on her, very similar to Dom, where people just love to hate on her, even though she's incredibly talented. I think she's going to have a nice run as the champion.
No, me too. And we have the fatal four-way for the women's title. And you know what? I think in that tag team match, I think it's going to be Jade and Bianca retaining. We have Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, Damage Control, and Chelsea Green and Piper Niven in that match as well. But I think Jade and Bianca retain. I do think they'll lose the title soon, but I don't think quite yet. I think that's saved for Survivor Series.
Yeah, look, normally in a match like this, everything favors everybody but the champion. I think that they're going to have a lot of false finishes, but those two are going to find a way to walk out champions.
And of course, the last match on the card I wanted to save for last. This might open the show, but it's probably going to be arguably the best match of the night. LA Knight versus Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes. And honestly, do it. Put the title on Melo. I'm ready for it. I'm predicting Melo wins the U.S. title at Crown Jewel.
I don't want to make a prediction, but I will say this because you know how I feel about LA Knight. I'm good as long as he doesn't win. I don't care who wins as long as it's not him. So I don't care if it's Andrade. I don't care if it's Melo. Just not that guy.
Well, that's fair. And, Mo, we only got 5 minutes left. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the time to introduce announce the big news. Because last week, we interviewed Chase, the founder of Fountain City Pro Wrestling. Well, in his event he was running, which is, this past Friday, Wayward Son, went awesome. He crowned his first ever Fountain City Professional Wrestling Champion. That was won by a gentleman by the name of Camaro Jackson. We will be bringing the champ on the Meaty Boyz next week.
That's awesome.
So we are going to be interviewing the Grand Regent, Camaro Jackson. And I will say, make sure you keep an eye on the Meaty Boyz page, because when I say we want to do this interview, we want to get him with the hard-hitting questions. We got him for an hour. So throughout the week, I'm going to try to post things like, the easy questions. Why did you get into wrestling? I'm going to go up. I'm going to try to find those. I'm going to post them. So next week, our goal is to challenge Mr. Camaro Jackson. We're going to try to challenge the champ. So look, Meaty Boyz, throughout the week, look for all my different stuff I'm going to be making on Camaro Jackson to try to introduce you to him leading up to next Tuesday when we interview the Grand Regent himself. So
I'm excited for it. I am. You know what? I want to pick the champ's brain too. We talk because you and I talk a lot about historical characters in wrestling. So I'm gonna pick the champ's brain and just ask him who was his favorite wrestlers coming up.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's and to give some kind of a background, he's actually wrestled on he's been on TV before. Actually, he's wrestled as part of AEW. He's been in the ring with in the NWA, Ring of Honor, AEW, Violent City Pro. He's based out of the Midwest in like the Kansas City area, but he does travel. Like I think today he has an event. He had one in St. Louis, and I think he has one in Illinois. Like I think Brownstown, Illinois. So he travels. He's been wrestling for about 7 years. He's been in the ring with guys like Wardlow,
wow,
The Righteous, NWA champion Trevor Murdoch, who was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. I love the tag team Caden Murdoch. So, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be great. And like I said, look for that content, because we're going to try to come in with the hard-hitting questions right off the bat for the entire hour. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. Mo, before we get on out of here tonight, I got so excited I got ahead of myself. Got anything you want to add, sir?
No, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, joining you and I, chopping it up on the Meaty Boyz podcast, all things wrestling. And we appreciate you guys for tuning in, following us, your shares, your likes, everything like that. It just keeps building us up, and we appreciate all your support.
Yeah, and you know what? Are you guys going to be doing? You can catch Mo on the morning show tomorrow.
Absolutely.
You can catch us again in 2 days. We'll be on the On One podcast, and believe me, there's plenty to talk about from week 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we get on out of here, this is the last time you see us. I got a special video to play for you guys, but we appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And make sure you tune in next week, because truly the champ will be here. So have a good night. See y'all next week.
Allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm the Grand Regent, Camaro Jackson. Many men wish they could step up to me. Many men wish they could snatch more heads than me. Many men wish they could conquer more kingdoms than me. I'm knocking all of y'all heads off y'all shoulders. I'm taking over that kingdom now. Who do you honor?
Titles changing, legends lore.